Hi, this is Mr. Waite. Today I'm going to be talking about the Saturday study session for microevolution. Hopefully you have a few of these things with you. Hopefully you have your AP equation and formula sheet with you. That's always going to come in handy. And for this session you should have printed off or have this in front of you, the microevolution student packet for the Saturday study session guide. And we'll go through here the multiple choice questions. We have some grid-in questions, and then finally some FRQ questions. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's start by first of all reviewing a couple things. This is one of my favorites. It's adapted from Mr. Paul Anderson, and he does the 5 fingers of evolution. If you keep in mind, the thumb is nature chooses yes, nature chooses no. That's going to be natural selection. If we just point our pointer finger, that's gene flow. I point to the left or point to the right. Genes could go this way, genes could go that way. And what's going to be causing that? Immigration or emigration, individuals coming in or out of the population. Mutations, middle finger for M for mutations, is another source of genetic variation or evolution. Non-random mating is another one, and often what we do is we draw a ring. This is the ring finger. In other words, it's not random. We select who we mate with, or the organism selects. And then the last one down here, pinky finger for small populations. Small populations are much more likely to be affected by genetic drift. Let's go ahead and look at question number 1 on here. And it says, road construction has isolated a small portion of the beetle population from the main population. So first thing you should recognize is that there was a population here. Some type of fragmentation has happened, so that now we have side A and side B. We have a small population over here, and it refers to this as a small portion. After a few generations, this new population exhibits dramatic genetic differences from the original one. These genetic differences are most likely because of what? Well, what should we review for this one? We have to keep in mind we're looking at a small population. We already mentioned that small populations are more susceptible to genetic drift. 2 types of genetic drift are the bottleneck effect and the founder effect. Let's look at one of these. Let's look at the bottleneck effect. Typically what happens, we have a large population, some type of a disaster strikes, and we're left with a smaller population over here. What you should notice though is that the colors or the alleles are going to be very different. This gene pool has a different combination of genes than this gene pool, so that's been a drastic change. Now, if we go back to the original question, let's look at some of the answers. It says, could this differences be due to mutations being more common in the new environment? And mutations are a source of genetic variation, but it doesn't mean that again, if we have our population, that one population is going to have more mutations than the one that it was separated from. So I'm going to skip that one. Letter B, an allele frequency among the beetles differ by chance. I do like that word right there where it says it differs by chance, because remember, genetic drift is all about chance. From those in the parent population's gene pool, and a subsequent genetic drift caused even more divergence from the original gene pool. I like that one, but I'm going to read the rest of them. Gene flow increases in the new environment. So does it mean we have more individuals coming in or out of this environment versus this one? It doesn't necessarily say that. We're not going to assume that. And then the last one, in a new environment, the new environment is different from the old, favoring directional selection. Again, the question doesn't say anything about this environment being terribly different than this one. So I'm going to cross that one out, and I'm going to go back to this one. Again, the words I like, and we've got to keep this in mind, is that this is by chance. Genetic drift is by chance right here. Anything else we should look at this? Maybe also we're going to keep in mind this idea over here. Besides the bottleneck, there's also this idea of the founder effect, where again, populations are separated and the gene or the allele combination is going to change. Let's go ahead and look at question number 2 now. It's talking about the pesticide DDT, widely used as an insecticide The table below shows the development of resistance in mosquitoes. And whenever you get a table or graph, start to identify what we're looking at. We're looking at over time, it looks like the resistance is increasing. So let's look at our possible answers here. Which of the following best explains the increase in the percentage of mosquitoes resistant to DDT over time? Well, we could look at this and it says, is it due to a migration of mosquitoes from other areas, kind of like a gene flow? And this doesn't say anything up here about mosquitoes coming in or mosquitoes going out. I'm going to cross that one off. Next one, it says natural selection causes mosquitoes to increase their mutation rate and adapt to the presence of DDT. And what we have to remember, it's really not the environment that's causing this. The mutations that are happening for this original population happened by chance, and it just happens to be those ones that happen to survive by chance are going to reproduce by chance too. So it's not because of a natural selection or the environment of any way. This one, next one says the competition for limited resources causes mosquitoes to migrate. And again, we're not talking about competition right here or any type of migration. So let's look at the last one. Selective pressures favor mosquitoes with the resistant phenotype, causing the frequency of the resistant allele in the population to increase. And that is what we see here. We're going to go with that one for our answer, but let's quickly look at a picture of this. This is one example of artificial selection by backfiring. If I'm out to get rid of this beetle population, I'm not sure why I'm getting rid of beetles. If you look closely, you'll see that let's get a color you can see in here, 2 out of the 6 beetles have this gene that's resistant for the pesticide that's being applied. The other individuals are going to die, but these 2 individuals are going to pass on their genes so that the next generation is going to have more individuals with the genes that are resistant to pesticides, something that's fairly common. All right, let's go ahead and look at the next question, and we're going to look at question number 3 here. Given a population that contains genetic variation, what is the correct sequence of the following events under the influence of natural selection? All right, so the key word here is we're looking at what's happening in natural selection. And if you look closer, it's an ordering question. We've got to figure out the order of these. So what generally happens first in all of these? I hope you had a chance to read through these. But usually we're looking at some type of an environmental change. So I'm going to say that's probably going to be our first one on here. After the environment changes, that's going to cause the selective pressure. There's going to be a pressure on the organisms to change, or the alleles frequency needs to change somehow. So I think that would be a good one for number 2. After that, after those alleles are selected, they're going to be passed on from generation to generation. So reproductive success. Finally, the allele frequencies are going to change if given enough time. So when I look at my answers down here, I'm looking for this one. Number 4 is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this looks to be our best option for this particular one. Let's look at anything the slide has to say about this. This is just a recap of natural selection. Let me go back to that, I apologize. What's being selected for here? If we look closely at this, we see a population of individuals, kind of a light grayish color. For whatever reason, the light ones were selected against. The dark ones went ahead and reproduced, and you can see there's a higher percentage of darker ones in the next population. Again, the lighter color ones do not survive for whatever reason. The darker ones pass on their genes. If this happens after a few generations, eventually what we see is the genes that are being selected for are going to be passed on. So that's, again, nature is choosing. Let's keep going and look at our next one. I go back here. Number 4. All right, this one is a study about the black-footed ferrets. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I had a chance to kind of analyze the graph earlier, and here's what I want you to notice. Whenever I look at a multiple choice question, I look for keywords, and this one right here tells me genetic diversity is measured by the number of alleles per locus. When I come down here and I say and then it says that's proportional with the polymorphic loci or the frequency of heterozygotes per locus, which is what we're looking at here and we're looking at over here. So overall, when these numbers decrease, I know that my genetic diversity is also decreasing as well. Genetic diversity is also going to go down if these go down. Over here, I'm looking at what happens over time. So let's see if I can get my full screen up here to show the full question. Let's go back here. All right, so again, we're looking at genetic diversity going down. And over here, this is just time. And we can see for a period of about 80 years or so, this is broken up in here, there wasn't a whole lot of change. But then all of a sudden, around here in 1972, there was a change. And remember what's going down right here is the amount of genetic diversity. So let's look at our answer choices. Black-footed ferrets are at risk for extinction because the population's ability to respond to changes in the environment is affected by genetic diversity. I like the words here, genetic diversity. It's going down, and that could be affected by that. Let's keep looking at our other choices. The next one says random mating in the remaining black-footed ferrets will restore the original genetic diversity. I don't think random mating is going to be restoring anything. Remember, selective mating or non-random mating is often what we refer to as causes of evolution. So I'm going to get rid of letter B here. Letter C says changes in the gene frequencies resulting from the genetic drift will not have a measurable effect. If there were gene frequencies, that would have some type of effect. So I don't like the word not in there. I'm going to get rid of that. And then it says, last one, a decreased genetic diversity will allow individual ferrets to respond more favorably. Oh no, that's not true at all. Again, if we're going to respond favorably, we want a high genetic diversity, not a decreased genetic diversity. So I'm going to go back up to this one that says the ability to respond is due to the genetic diversity. Let's choose letter A for that one. Let's see if there was anything to review. Just before we looked at that, this is the key thing here. Keep in mind that populations with little genetic diversity are at risk for extinction. So the more genetic diversity the population has, the more likely they are to survive a major catastrophe of some type. So let's go back here. All right, let's look at 5, 6, and 7. All right, which of the following is the best explanation for why high frequencies of heterozygotes is correlated with a higher genetic diversity? For this one, basically what we're looking at here, let's look at some of the answers. Whoops, cross this out. It says heterozygote it has more advantageous phenotype. It's partially true. It can be more advantageous, but I'm not so sure about that one. In heterozygous condition, the recessive allele is hidden from the natural selection, allowing variation to be maintained. I do like how it's talking about how it's hiding the allele, allowing variation to be maintained. So I'm going to say I think it's this one, but let's keep going. Having high proportion of heterozygotes minimizes the chances of offspring being affected by recessive deleterious mutation. Not necessarily. And then last one on here, it says heterozygotes, heterozygote individuals experience a higher reproductive success, passing its genes to offspring and preserving them for future generations. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to have a higher reproductive success. So I'm going to get rid of that one. These were a tough choice, but I'm going to stay with number 5 for this one. And I only have about a minute left in this podcast. So I think we're going to stop at number 5. In the next one, we'll pick up at multiple choice questions number 6, number 7. And let's go ahead and look at the math question or the grid-in question that goes along with that. I hope that helps.